should be on audio on your Chromebook because it creates loads of echo and garbled, whatever the right word is, noise. So please, no one connect to your Chromebook for audio. Only use your phone, and all you have to do is mute your phone on your phone. Okay, is that, who's that, Brendan?
It's done.
Oh, okay.
Lisa says she's using the access code. That's it. That is the.
She has to hit pound again. Maybe she didn't hit pound twice. Hey, Brendan, good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Are you exhausted yet?
Yeah.
I was a little lightheaded after the last call. I think I talked too much.
Okay,
This is
so,
exactly the same.
Leslie Domke will be the lead in this room, and she'll let you know when we're ready to start.
So should I? Oh,
Here, I'll just move it over.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, since therapists, I have to go to another meeting. It will be Leslie and Brendan. I'll pop in a little bit after. I just want to really let everyone know to please just take a deep breath, take in the information. You're going to be presented with a lot, but I promise you, it is very intuitive. This is going to be an easy system to begin. We're working hard to get it as best as it can be for you guys, meaning so, really pay attention.
So Pete,
Lisa, that's your phone.
I'm sorry?
so mute your phone, Lisa.
I don't know how to do that.
You hit mute on your phone.
Oh, you mean my phone itself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Promise me everyone's paying attention at the same time. Because that's really why we want, so that I know. I'm gonna go before
Happy. I'm just starting the meeting.
Lisa, it looks like your phone or your Chromebook is still unmuted. Maybe Brendan, you could mute her. Thank you.
Yeah, just muted.
I just want
I'm gonna.
to, before we get started with Brendan, I just want to make one other comment, kind of jumping on what Janie said. We all need to, like she said, take a deep breath. This is going to be, the first few weeks are going to be bumpy, but Paravision is such a wonderful tool and so customizable that we're able to make adjustments on the fly. So when you see something, please call us, let us know. If it's something, if it's a permission, a security permission that needs to change, something you need to have access to that you don't, this is all easily fixable. So what we found with hospice is that things have come up and they're challenges, but they're not difficult challenges. And so I just would want everybody to keep that in mind, that the product that we're looking at on April 19th is not going to be the same product that we look at on October 1st. It's going to change and get better and better and better. So I'll leave you with that. Leslie's gonna, I think we're ready to start, Brendan.
Yeah, so everybody's on mute and, okay.
We're ready to go.
Okay, so.
All right. Sounds good. Now, yeah, I muted everybody's line, so if anybody has any questions, you can either use the chat and ask that question that way, or towards the end, we'll probably have some time. You guys can have some questions, but if we're on a certain module and you guys have questions about that, it'd be good to get those answered right then and there. So just kind of stop me if I'm going too fast, slow me down. I don't, whatever we got to do. And I've enlarged my screen about as much as I can do for it to be comfortable on my end. So hopefully you guys can see that. I do know if you remove the participants, if you minimize those, it will make that screen bigger too. So you might do that if needed. So we're going to go through the patient encounter today and kind of give you an overview of what the patient chart looks like. And then hopefully towards the end of this, we will get to where we can enter a service note. and kind of go through your more day-to-day operations. But we may not get to that at the end of today. If not, we will pick up where we left off on that next training. So this is the home screen. By the way, my name is Brendan Cole. I'm an RN, Senior Implementation Manager with CareEfficient. I've been working with this system for years as a client, and then now I work with them, so implementing agencies. So I'm going to show you the online version of the patient encounter and go from there. So our website is going to be the ams.careefficientinc.com. You guys, once you get there, you should bookmark that and have that easily available. Maybe set up your home screen on a browser to go to it, whatever you guys need to do. The only thing I need to tell you on this screen, this is the login screen, your org code will never change. It's always going to be LMVH3106, and that will always be that. Your username will either be your email address, or it will default. If you don't have an email address, it will default to your first initial and last name. If you do have an email address in there, everything kind of works better. If you forget your password, you can click on Forgot Password, re-enter the org code and username, and it will actually email you a temporary password. As well as when your administrators give you web access initially, as long as there's an email address in there, it will email you a default password or a temporary password that I recommend copying and pasting it from that email into this password field, even though those letters and stuff, special characters seem easy to do. There may be a space in there or something. I don't know. There's times where it doesn't work unless you copy and paste it. So just please be aware of that as well. If you do not have an email address associated to your file, then you won't be able to use the Forgot Password link. And when you get your initial web access, your administrators will have to give you the temporary password that they will create. So log in with those credentials you were given, and then click Sign In. This is going to bring you to your home screen. It won't necessarily always look like this because it just kind of depends on your defaults up here, as well as the size of your display. So mine's kind of all scrunched together. Normally it's a little bit more spread out. So you might have to scroll a little bit more than normal, depending on the size of your screen. All your visits are going to start showing up on, per day that are assigned to you. And we're going to come back to this on how to enter notes at a later time and the other options you have. But I want to go over this home page and encounter first. You might get pop-up messages when you first log in. Those are going to be pop-up messages that your administrators can set up, as well as CareEfficient is going to do some automatically. We do system enhancements and upgrades and maintenance usually every other Thursday, but sometimes we'll do it every Thursday. Just kind of depends on how much we have going out. And when we do those enhancements, we do put out a notice to let you know we're going in there to do this. Usually it's every other Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I do just recommend maybe saving and closing any any progress that you've made up until that point, just in case, because if you were to hit click, save or complete or anything like that, the second we go in there, you may lose some data, and I don't want you guys to do that. Nobody wants to re-document anything. It's usually not a big issue. Sometimes when we go in there and do the maintenance, even if you are in there, you might just see some slow responses or even no access, but usually that only lasts for a couple minutes, just so we can get in there and get the programming in and get out. So please be aware of those and read those, and make sure you do save and close your work, just so you don't lose anything. Those pop-up messages, to get rid of them, you will have a little checkbox in the bottom that says "Do not show again." You can click on that. Otherwise, every time you click to go to a new link in the system, it just keeps popping up over and over and again. So make it not read it and then do not show again, and then you'll still be able to see those announcements over here on the left-hand side under the announcements section. Your administrators can also do announcements that do not pop up and that they just show up over here, as well as CareEfficient will as well. Sometimes they may pertain to you and your discipline or agency type, and sometimes they won't, but just read them. You can click read more to read the additional information. And I'm muting some of you guys that are just now joining, just so you know, because we don't want any feedback or anything, but we'll have a chance to ask questions later. The other thing you might see over here, and all of this is going to be based off your role. So obviously you guys out in the field probably won't see invoices or associates on your end. So this is all based off your role, whether or not you have access to it. The reports and options, I don't know if these will really be beneficial to you guys, but just know it's here. If you have access to reports and different things, you can find these reports and go straight to them. If you click on the little blue icons next to them, you can find out information about how to run the reports or things like that. But again, you may not have access to that, and a lot of these may not apply to you, but it is there. Don't worry about this EVV access code. The schedules, you can jump to different schedules if you just want to search for that, or even just different patient encounters. And there's a little bit of there's another way if they're already on your screen that's a lot faster. So I'll show you that here in a little bit too.
I'm on now.
Okay. So again, you probably won't see invoices or associates. The only thing down here under the other actions is there is directions and mapping. It will lay out and let you kind of move your visits in order that you plan on driving, and it will give you directions and mapping to those different locations. So it's a little bit helpful there. Uploaded service notes would be if you were to use the app and wanted to upload those service notes. If they, for some reason, something didn't match, like the service code, then the note will not automatically apply, so they'll end up showing up here. But you guys shouldn't have to worry about that. And then you can add your pay-onlys via here as well. And then there is an educational documents. If your agency does set this up and puts education and uploads it into their organization, then those documents would be available to click on or to choose from, and you'd be able to view all that educational material so that you can teach a patient a certain, exercise program or whatever. And then, of course, you got your clock in and clock out. I believe you guys are having a separate training for that. So this is your home screen. Most of your work is going to be done, at least start from here. I do have a visit on here for a therapy for today that we are going to use for the demonstration. So if you were to click on any visit, you do have this pop-up menu with certain options. We're going to come back to some of these. Add note, we'll come back to add page service note. This is how you're going to add your service notes. You can view print blank assessments. You can edit the service code if needed. And again, some of these are going to be based off your security, so you may not see some of these. And another thing is these menus will change based off the status of the visit as well. So your options may change. If you have a service note already attached but it's not complete, instead of having the option to add a note, you'll have the option to edit a note, things like that. But what I wanted to show you is the view patient encounter and view patient schedule link. You guys will use this probably pretty regularly. If you just click on that patient's name and go to view patient encounter, it takes you straight to their encounter. And same with their schedule, it takes you straight to the patient's schedule. So this home screen is the associate schedule. But if you needed to see who else was going to see them or follow-up visits for that exact patient, you can go to that exact patient's schedule this way. Cancel would be to cancel the service if it maybe was a missed visit, but we'll come back to that option here in a little bit too. So right now we're going to go to the view patient encounter, and it's going to take us to this test patient's encounter, and every patient will look the same, except of course the information will be different. Up at the top area, that's kind of a little bit of a darker gray, all of this information is going to be visible no matter what tab you're on down below. And it's the more pertinent information: patient's name, patient's phone number. There is an address book next to the patient's phone that you can hover over, and it'll give you their home address, additional phone numbers if they have any. So you can do that. If the physician had contact information, they'd have a phone book as well that you could hover over, and it'll give you the physician's address, fax number, phone numbers as well. The allergies, once they're added to the patient encounter, they will start be displayed here. And there's a little notes section. This is for important notes. They would be added to this notes tab, but they'll be visible up here. So for different notes that may be very important that your agency wants you to know about that patient. You also see the agency name over here. You'll see the start of care date. You'll see the primary diagnosis. Once it's added, the encounter will be listed here next to this little magnifying glass icon. But if you were to click on that icon, you would see all the additional diagnosis codes as well. You'll see their disaster level up here, their advanced directive narrative here, their DNR status, date of birth, age, and then the status of the encounter, which you'll see the different statuses are pending for a patient that has not been admitted or activated yet. Active, if they have been activated. They may be on hold. Discharged, if they are discharged, there would be a discharge date underneath. And the last one would be non-admit. You might see, if you were in a non-admit encounter, you'd see that information up here too. Okay, so down here, under the different tabs that we have, the profile tab is going to have, under the personal side, it's going to have the basic patient demographics, their name, date of birth, age, et cetera, medical record number, that information. If you guys upload pictures of your patients, this would be uploaded here, and you can have picture IDs of these patients as well. And different characteristics you guys can add if they're, in a different, I guess right now all we have is military's characteristics, but you can put Spanish speaking only, things like that if this was added to the tables, and then you could choose that and identify those different characteristics. Under the current encounter side, on the right side over here, this is information about this encounter. So this was the first encounter for this patient, so we've only admitted them one time. If we discharge and readmit this patient, it will change to encounter number 2, and so on and so forth. So you'll know what encounter you're on, in which case the verbal start of care would be different for each time you admitted the patient, and some of this other information could change as well. But the other information that's listed here would be the verbal start of care, the start of care, the somebody from your agency's calling me. Hold on. Their address would be here as well, their county, referral source, referral phone number, the admission source, admission type, which of course for Medicare patients is important to answer. Their DNR status will be listed here as well, their agency name, agency type. And then this down here is for value-based purchasing. I believe you guys don't have to do this, but that information is going to be here. The next tab is the contacts tab. This is where, and probably most of this will be added from the intake. When they get the referral information in, they may get that address if they have it available and phone numbers. But you guys, if it's not available, you can add contact information. Choose, if it's a home address, mailing work, enter the address, the phone numbers. Now for phone numbers, you do need to hit add phone, and then you can, hold on, let me do this, add phone, and then you would need to check preferred, even if they only have one phone number. They could have 10 of them in there, but you need to, even if it's only one, check which one is the preferred number, so that this will display up here by the patient's name in the encounter, as well as it will pull to the disaster reports and stuff that your agency needs. So it does need to, if you add this information, you do need to put a preferred next to the phone number, at least one of them. So that information will end up being displayed here. To the right, you have patient contacts. This is going to be your patient next of kin, power of attorneys, relatives, any of that stuff. So If it's not required information, but it's very helpful for coordination of care. To add patient contact information, just click on Add Patient Contact. You'll have to pick these orange asterisks. You're going to see these every now and then. Those are bare minimum information before you can move forward. The ones without that, that means you can skip it. We can answer it later if we wanted to. But the bare minimum you have to pick for this is the orange asterisk here. And then you did continue, and you're going to get the same screen that you do for the patient contact. You add it the same way. You have to choose address type in the address. Now, for patient contacts, you don't actually have to have an address. You can just enter a phone number. If that's what you guys need to do, because sometimes you don't need their address. And I'm just getting rid of all that. And so, again, with the patient contact, when you add their phone numbers, you could check preferred if it is a preferred number, if there's more than one. But then you can have all that information here, and you can list as many contacts as you need to for these patients. Very helpful for coordination of care. This notes section, this is where you can add notes. This is internal communication about the patient. This is not your service note or your documentation for a visit. This would be any other kind of information that you just want other people to know about. Now, right now, the note types in here, we have different scheduling notes, caregiver notes, COVID-19 notes, directions, triage notes, telephone notes. We have a few different note types that you guys have available. So the way to add one is just to pick which note type click on the Add Note, and then choose what note type you want, and then just enter the verbiage that you need for that and hit Save. So this is just internal communication about that patient. The other things you can do in here, and there will be automated notes, like if something was faxed out of this patient encounter, like the medication list was faxed, or if something was uploaded to the encounter, you also get automated notes to let you guys know, hey, something was uploaded here, or something was faxed from here, and it lets you know who uploaded it, what it was, when it was done, etc. You have the option to filter to specific note types. So if you're only looking for direction notes, you can filter to just the direction note. You can also filter notes if you're only looking for notes that may have been entered in a certain time frame, like the previous certification period. You can go ahead and enter that time frame here and filter down to just those notes as well. You can also search keywords. This would search the word, the verbiage that's in the notes section, and you can filter it down to that. You do have the ability to export these in a list if needed. And you can actually deactivate them if you have security permissions to do this. You could actually click on a note, deactivate it. If it no longer applies, or maybe it was inadvertently added to the wrong patient encounter, you can get rid of it and hide it that way. And then you do have the option to show inactive. If you check that, just hit search, and you'll see those inactivated notes here. If it was inactivated by mistake, you do have the little blue back icon. You can click on that, and it will put it back in the active status. So this will be helpful for your coordination of care. And again, these note types are even more customizable, so we can make changes and add new labels if you guys needed some. The referral tab, you're only going to see this on brand new admissions starting after your go live date that are going to be admitted straight into Care Efficient. Otherwise, on all those transition patients that you have active on service right now, you will not see this referral tab. This will be entered, all this information is going to be entered from the intake, so you shouldn't have to do anything here, but you can view information here. The referral source information will be here. Referral source contact will be over here. There's a way to track whether this referral order, if it needed to even be signed. We can track when it was sent, when it was received, or we can say that it didn't need to be signed, etc. And then you can see other referral information, payer category, different disciplines. Now, this may be different from what you end up with in the end. Sometimes doctors only say admit to home health and that's all you get. So they may only put skilled nursing on there initially to do the eval, and then they may determine therapists are needed later, so this may be different than the reality of it. You'll see your referral date, your referrals or requested start of care date, admission source, admission type. If that was filled out on the referral intake process, then that will carry over everywhere it needs to carry over. Otherwise, you guys would add that when you activate the patients, when you go to add your service note. So this information, there'll be your physician orders. If they enter it, you may have the actual faxed referral on the documents tab, and I'll get to that here in a minute, that you can view as well. But they may say something like just see referral order, faxed referral order, and I'll show you where you can access that. Surgical procedures, diet, etc. Now, none of this information actually flows anywhere else. This is just your referral order. So just be aware of that. But this is where you can view that information. And then they'll have the ability to print it, mail it, or fax it, and then upload a signed version of it. The physician/facility tab, this is where you're going to identify the physicians, the primary physician, and any additional physicians involved in the care. Of course, the primary physician, that's the one whose MPI is going to go out with the OASIS. That's who all of your orders will default to initially, but you will have the ability to change who that order goes to, but you will only be able to choose the doctors that are listed on this physician tab. So if you have a doctor you received an order from that for this specific patient, they have to be added here before you can actually send and receive an order to that physician. And just in case that happens and you do need to add one, it's pretty easy. Just come over here and click on Add Physician. Type in their first and or last name, or you can even leave it blank and hit search, and you'll get a list of all the physicians here. And just put a checkbox next to that doctor's name that you need to add. The sequence here, if you leave it blank, it's just going to put them down at the bottom. If you put them at the first position, that's the primary physician. So be aware of that. Otherwise, you can put them in any order you want. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is the primary, so just be aware of that. Physician type you can label here if needed. And once you choose them, you would just hit save. I'm not going to add those because I've already got a couple extras here. And then you'll see a list of all these doctors here. And then we would be able to switch the doctor's name inside those orders to the correct doctor you received the order from. Over here to the right side of this tab, there's the last facility stay prior to start of care. This is, again, coordination care. It's helpful to know where they came from, where they were discharged from prior to going home. In case you need to contact that facility to get follow-up information, med lists or, anything you may need. It's just going to help identify that, where they came from right here. That's pretty much it with this tab. There's one other thing. There is the ability to move a doctor from a lower sequence and move them up to that primary physician. So if this was incorrect and this guy was the primary, you can just hit this top link right here, and it will move them up to the top. Okay, but I don't want to do that for the long run. The Documents tab has a couple different functions. There are electronic forms. These forms are going to be for like your home health consents and agreements, your normal Medicare forms like your HHCCNs, your ABNs, your NOMNOCs, all those ones. And we also have additional forms, and these are customizable. But we have a lot of different ones: photo release, 60-day summaries, Medicare as secondary payer. We even have infection control form, infection control report follow-up form, incident reports, etc. But how you would add it, you would just add the form you're looking for from this list, hit continue. It's going to take you into this form so that you can fill it out. Anywhere where there's these little round buttons, those are radio buttons. That means it's a single select, so you can only select one option out of those options here. You also have the text box here for the calendars for dates. You can type in the date or just click on the calendar and then click on the date that you're reporting this incident, time of the incident. Just fill it out all appropriately. Now, on these bigger multi-text boxes, these are a little bit bigger than these smaller ones. These, you notice there's two little lines on the bottom right-hand corner. If you drag and drop that, you can be able to view all of that documentation instead of just one or two lines of it at a time. So be aware of that. Now you can do that inside your service notes as well. If it's a square box, those are multi-select, so you can select all that apply. When you fill out any of these forms and you're ready for the patient, now some of them will be set up for patients to sign along with you, and some of them will not. So it depends on if you see this patient responsible party signature link here or just agency representative, but you're always going to see the agency representative signature. Once you fill out the form, you're going to click on Apply Signatures. When it does that, it grays everything out, so now you can't edit this form anymore. The only way you would be able to is to remove the signatures, and then you can re-edit it, and then you'd have to have the patient or you would have to sign it again after you've made those changes. So after that, you've hit the Apply Signatures, it grays it out. You're going to click on, if it's a form a patient needs to sign, you're going to click Patient Responsible Party Signature. It's going to bring up a little window for that patient to sign in. And then you could clear it if it didn't turn out like a good signature, or you can hit Accept as soon as you like it. And then for you, you're the agency representative, you would click on this link, and it's going to bring up this window here. Every time you guys need to sign anything, whether it's a physician order, a service note, or one of these forms, or even if you're approving medication profiles and things like that, anytime you have to sign anything, this is what's going to come up, and it's going to remember your last signature that you used. So initially, it's going to pull your full name and credentials from your associate profile, and it's going to make this real pretty cursive, legible signature with your credentials, and it will print the attestation for an electronic signature along with your signature on any form that you guys end up printing later on. You do have the option to draw your own signature. You can even upload a file. I would be careful about that, because if it's not the exact size that it needs to be, it may not work. But you can choose to draw your signature, and then in that box up here, you can just use your finger or the stylus, and you can sign it. Now, that very first time you sign anything, there's going to be a checkbox defaulted here that says Save My Signature for Future Use. As long as you leave that checked and you hit Accept, then every time this window pops up, it's going to remember that last signature, and all you have to do is hit Accept, so you don't have to re-sign it every single time. Now, these signatures are time-stamped. You don't see it in this edit mode of the service notes or forms, but you will see it when you print these forms out, so be aware of that. Make sure you visualize these signatures here before you actually complete the form. If it didn't take for some reason, you would need to reapply those signatures. You do have the option, let me explain some things. The Save and Continue is there because while you're filling out this form, and you could be spending an hour doing it, we don't see any of that information until this is you either hit Save and Continue, which will send us what you've entered so far, and then it'll keep you in the edit mode of this form or service note, and you would be able to finish your documentation, and then you can complete it as soon as you're done. There are instances where you may need to save and close. This will also send us that information that you have so far, and then it'll show you this form is in here and it's in an incomplete status. If it was completed, you could see that as well. But to go back into that form, you can just click on the little edit pencil next to it, and it'll bring you right back into it. And then you could finish filling it out. Again, you'd have to get those signatures after you fill it out. And then you can mark it as complete when you're done. Good thing and bad thing about these notes, they are electronic. You can do it. They always have one available for you as long as you have internet access. However, you don't always have a printer out there with you in the field. So some of these forms may need to be printed off and taken back to the patient and left in the home. And your agency may have other plans. You can view that form by just clicking on the printer icon, and it will pull it up in a PDF format so that you guys can view that, print it, whatever you need to do. Other options are, and it depends on the form, some agencies create forms for like case conferences, and so they may have you come in and add your signature to that kind of case conference type form. And it depends on if they do it here or the orders tab, but there is the option to add additional signatures as well. So if you wanted 30 clinician signatures on one form, you do have that ability. The documents down here, this is where anything uploaded to the patient encounter that wasn't, entered electronically into CareEfficient. So, anything that came over on a fax machine for this patient, maybe lab results, your referral, maybe coming over here. Anytime you get the agency gets a signed doctor's order, they're going to upload it under the orders tab, but then those are going to be displayed here. So anything uploaded to the chart, it will be displayed under this document section. To click on the document or to download it, or to view it or to download it, depends on the file, what type it is. This is a Word document, so you would need an ability to open a Word document, but if you were to click on that, it would just download it so that you can open it. Now, if it's like a PDF file or a JPEG or a picture, and your browser is set to open those kind of files automatically, then if you clicked on one of those, and it just opens up a whole another window, and you don't have to download it and open it. And then there's the ability to download multiple things. That would be more for like an audit or an ADR. They can go and download all the signed orders, the referral, if they can download everything at one time to get to the auditor. So you have the ability to do that. You just put a checkbox next to all that apply and then hit download, print, or print selected documents. And again, to download or view them, just click on the description. So this is it. Now there is going to be, in our last training, they did mention that they are going to upload a lot of documents here and stuff from the old system maybe. So this is where you're going to look for a lot of information for your patient that's not already entered directly in these tabs up here. The clinical tab, this is where it's a lot of coordination care in here. There's a clinical team. You can identify case manager, clinical manager. So if somebody in the office is managing this patient from an administrative view, and you needed to contact them about the patient, they could be identified up here as well as their phone numbers. And then it's not mandatory, but you can also identify an entire team. So every discipline or every person involved in this patient's care could be identified here. Just by clicking on Add Clinical Team, put a checkbox next to everybody that applies, and then whoever the primary discipline is, you can actually put a checkbox next to them and hit Save, and then those would be visible right here. Specialty skills. These are to identify different things like, wound care, pediatrics, if they're a respiratory or psych patient, endocrine for diabetics or whatever. You can identify the patient here. It's just kind of a label for the skills they may require, but it works in two ways because you can also add skills to clinicians. So if you only had a psych nurse, one psych nurse, or one or two wound care nurses, something like that, that you'd prefer to put all the wound care on and psych on, et cetera. If you label the patient with a skill and you label the associate with a skill, when you go to assign visits, it moves them to the top of the list saying that they're the best match for this visit. So that's how that works. I'm going to cancel out of that. Vendors can be tracked here. They would be added to the settings if you guys wanted to track vendors. Now, on the transition patients, this disaster plan actually needs to be manually added to the clinical tab. This will flow to the 485 as well as the global disaster plan report. So they do need to be added to every patient. On your brand new admits moving forward, there's actually a disaster plan question inside your service note that you can answer, and then that information will pull here to the clinical tab, and then again flows to the other places as needed. to add one, you just click Edit under that disaster plan, and you choose what level is appropriate for that patient, and then you can enter the patient-specific disaster plan details into this box here. Now, there is a link here to the right if your agency administrators want to add some templates, verbiage templates for your disaster plans with things like, required information that they want you to have. Then they can enter those templates in here, and they would be available. You just put a checkbox next to the one that applies from the list below, and then you would hit Save. Now, what that would do is pull in the verbiage, and it may have low dashes where they want you to put a date or a place or a person's name, things like that. So after you add that suggested text here, you can come back in here and edit it completely. You can make it 100% different if you wanted to, but you'd be able to edit it in any way you needed to. And then you would just hit Save, and then that would save that verbiage. Again, it pulls to the 485 and disaster plan. The consents and notices grid, if a document is uploaded and labeled as an assignment of benefits, patient signature, or release of information, then it will show that it is signed, and that you would see the document link there and when it was uploaded. For vital sign parameters, I'm going to go ahead and remove these so I can kind of start from scratch. And the verbiage does change a little. Okay, so when you first come here, now even if it's a start of care or a transition patient, this is where the vital sign parameters need to be added. It's directly on the clinical tab. So you'll see this link that says Add Default Vital. When you click on that, you're going to get a list, and this all comes from your agency settings, these values, but you can make them patient specific. So if you didn't want this to be 96, you wanted it 95, you can type that in there. You can put 95.5, whatever patient specific vital sign parameters you want added. These work in two ways. They pull to your 485, so that the physician will sign for these, as well as if you're inside of a service note and you document a vital outside of the range, it will give you a little red icon next to that field, and if you hover over it, it'll tell you, hey, the range should be 95.5 to 101. So it does not give you an error saving your service note, but it gives you a heads up that you have physician-ordered vital sign parameters, that you're outside of that parameter, you need to call the doctor. So it will give you a heads up. Now, of course, it could truly be, 94 degrees or whatever it ends up being, and you'll be able to save your note, but you really need to document towards that. So some of these may not apply, like blood sugars, weight, O2 sats, may not apply to your specific patient type. So how to get rid of those is just hit Save and get these applied, and then just scroll down and hit the trash can. Now, anything you delete in the system is going to give you a little pop-up window and say, are you sure you want to delete it? Documents and things that you delete out of the system are gone forever. Now, the vital sign parameters you can bring back, so that wouldn't be a big deal. But that's why we give you anything you delete, you're going to have to say you want it deleted twice. So I'm going to get rid of all that don't apply to this patient and just leave the ones that do. And that's how you add those. And they can be edited and adjusted. If things change along the way, you can update this information as well. The DME down here, I do not recommend using this for home health. This is for the hospice side. This creates workflow because they have to provide DMEs while they're on service on hospice. This does not flow to your 485, so don't even waste your time entering that information right here. That's just for hospice. Advanced directive information would be added here. You can just hit the edit next to there and or add advanced directives, and then you'll be able to choose what advanced directive in the signature date is, and then hit Save. Oops. The other things, and then when you do add those, you can enter that description. It'll show you when it was uploaded as well. The vaccinations, you can add and track vaccinations. So, just pick the vaccination, enter the date of the vaccination, hit Save, and you guys can track those vaccinations here. The programs, this can be used. Now, these would have to be added by your administrators, but certain therapies, might have a loud program or some kind of program. And if you guys want to identify that, you could add them they could be added to the settings, and you can add those to your patient encounters to identify them. The other times, agencies use this for community-based programs like Meals on Wheels or adult daycares, things like that. Again, this is all just going to be the coordination of care, information. Up above there, we have disciplines. So every time there's an order for a new discipline, it's going to display that discipline in here. It's just at a quick glance, you can see, okay, we've got OT, PT, skilled nursing, MSWs, and speech in there, or you may have home health aides, et cetera. So at a quick glance, you can see what disciplines are involved in the care without reading every single order. So that's the clinical tab. Again, on the transition patients, everything has to be manually added here. And then on your new admissions moving forward, most of that's going to pull from your service note, except for the clinical team, specialty skills, vendors, vaccines, of course, the consents and notices and vital sign parameters. So none of this will pull. You will have to come to the clinical tab if you are the primary discipline building that plan of care. Medications, I'm going to spend a good chunk of time on here. I am going to start from scratch. You can't delete meds, by the way, like I just did. If they pull to an order, they will be locked down. The only thing you can do is either discontinue the medication or make a change to the dosage, or you go to the order and remove it from your order. Then you can come back in here and remove it from here if it was entered, inadvertently on a wrong encounter or wrong med, whatever. So once it pulls to an order, it will remove those trash cans. So I'm going to go through quickly and show you all these different things and how they work. So add medications, how we're going to add a med. I'll come back to that. Add medication kits are more for the hospice side, but there's entire kits that you can add. You'll have the ability to print the medication profile, the ability to approve the medication profile. You can fax the medication profile to physicians or facilities if they get admitted. If there is an approval history, you will see an approval history drop-down box. And then when you first come to your meds tab, it will default to your active meds, but you can change it to inactive or all so that you can view all the medications. And then the last thing here is the mass inactivate. And again, this is more for hospice. You guys probably won't use that. And normally these are all in one line, but my screen is enlarged, so it kind of moves things around. Okay, so to add a medication, you're going to click on the Add Medication link. And it's going to open up this medication entry screen. Okay, so your first option is, or initially you're going to put them in as either existing or new. And then later you'll have the option to change and discontinue them. So you pick the entry type, type in part or all of the spelling of the med, and then hit the little drop-down arrow. This is Lexicomp Drug Database. This is how meds are typically manufactured and distributed. Of course, it may be a half a tab issue or something like that. If that's the case, you can type in half a tab under the patient dosage and frequency. Now, you do want to pick a med out of this list if at all possible, because if you do not pick it out of this list, we will not have any patient education or drug-to-drug interactions for those meds or any other clinical information that you guys need about those medications, and I'm going to go over that after I add them. So try to pick it from this list, even if it's not exactly the right dosage. And then after you do that, then you can come in here and maybe adjust the dosage to the correct one. Or again, if it's a half a tab type issue, go ahead and just document that, and then you don't even have to change that milligram. That way we get all the information we need. Again, orange asterisks are the bare minimum to move forward. So you do have to enter all that information. This route is pulled from this drop-down list, so If that had to be changed, you could edit that as well. And then, of course, you'd put the original start date for that med. The type, you can track whether or not it's alternative, herbal, over-the-counter, or prescription. Who's prescribing that, which is very helpful, so that if you do need to notify the doctor about an issue with the med, you could easily identify that. Who's administering it, whether the facility staff is doing it, family, healthcare surrogate, or the patient takes it themselves. You can document that there. Now, these comments will flow to your med orders and your 485s, clinical updates, et cetera. So be aware of that. Be careful what you write here, but you do have the option to write additional information in there. They've got some pharmacies listed in here. I highly recommend using this. It's going to be helpful for y'all, but you can pick what pharmacy actually prescribes the medication. If the physician was notified, you can document that who. If not, you can leave that blank. And then approved by is going to be you. Now, on a new admit, and even on a recert, if this med was being added, you have the option to create an interim order. It's automatically going to flow to your open 485s and clinical updates. But if those were closed, if this was added, a week after the start of care, or 2 weeks into the episode, or whatever, of course you would want to write a med order for that. So you'd add the medication information in here, and then you can hit this little checkbox that says next to create interim order, and it will pull all of this information into an order for you that all you got to do is sign, and then they can send it out. So again, no double documentation, if any. You can hit save and add if you have more medications to add. If you're on your last one, always hit save and close, because if you hit save and add, you're going to end up with this blank screen, and of course there's minimum required information to move on. So you can either enter a fake med and get it deleted, or you can cancel, but sometimes when you cancel out of this, you won't see the other meds you entered yet. And then I've seen clinicians try to add them back, and then they end up being in there as duplicate meds. So to prevent any of that, those errors, on your last med, just hit the save and close, and you'll be good to go. I'm going to add a couple more. There are medications that you will need to override, mainly oxygen and wound care supplies and things like that that may not be in that drug database. So in that scenario, you would type in this medication's name, hit the drop down. You wouldn't see oxygen in here. It's not considered a medication by any drug database companies. It's more of a DME, if anything. So you'll see similar spelling meds, but you will not find oxygen in here. So in this case, just click off of that, or when you type it in, you already know it's not in the drop-down box. Just don't hit the drop-down box, and then just start manually adding the rest of this information. Okay, I'm just going to skip that for the sake of time. But in this scenario, when you hit save and close, you're going to get an error, or not really an error. It's going to give you a warning saying, hey, this medication you entered cannot be found in the medication database. Click here to add an unknown medication to the encounter. You're going to click on that, and you're going to get another warning up at the top saying, adding this medication will disable warnings and interaction information. And then that's only for this med, because that med is not in the database to pull information from. So there are going to be times you need to do that. Oxygen and wound care supplies are the top ones. So in that case, you just go ahead, you read the warning, just hit save and close. And it will add that medication here. And you can easily see that it's an overridden med because there's no alert icons, there's no printer icon, and if you hover over this little action item menu, you don't have the same options that you would on meds that you picked from the list, which are your side effects, pharmacology, patient education in English and in Spanish. So you can tell that that's been overridden that way. And again, you're going to just have to do that sometimes. Once you get more than one med in there, if there is a drug-to-drug interaction between any of them, you will get this grid will pop up below the meds. It'll show you the severity level, whether it's major, mild, moderate, and between what two drugs. And then there's this little icon to the right of that. If you hover over it, it'll give you, in medical terminology, it'll give you all the interaction information as well as all the reference materials where that information came from. Now you could copy and paste this into, your medication order to send to the physician. There's also a couple other ways that you guys can do that. So on these alerts, the little triangles, icons, these are your your warnings for that specific med. So you'll get things like your sound-alike, look-alike issues, international issues, geriatric patient issues, Beers criteria, pediatric issues, and then you're going to get a ton of reference materials. So this is all reference material from page 4 down. So it gives you a little bit of the medical terminology that you need to know about these meds, and then all the reference material. This could be printed as well. You could copy and paste it. You can do whatever you need to with that. The little orange asterisk icons, these are allergy and food interaction warnings. This will, if you click on that, it'll show you the food interactions, and it'll show you what to avoid, what maybe not to change in your diet, anything that's important concerning that individual med. You do see, as long as the physician has contact information, you've added that information. You can click on those phone books and get their, the address, phone number, fax number, so you can quickly call that doctor straight from while you're on this med tab. Sure enough, you call the doctor about this med, and he's not in front of his computer, and he's going to ask you what pharmacy do they need this called into. You would need to know that information. So unless you're still in there with the patient, you may not know it. So this is why I really recommend adding the pharmacies to your meds. And then you click on that pharmacy address book, and you'll get their address and phone number, fax number, if that's in there, and you'll get all that information. So the doctor may ask you for that, or you may need to call them. I call these action item menus. You'll see these in a few different areas in Care Efficient. If you hover over it, it gives you a sub-menu that'll pop up with additional options. So you can get side effects for this med, pharmacology information for this med. Again, those are medical terminologies. But we do have an option for patient education in English and in Spanish, so that you can, if you click on these are more in layman's terms, easy to understand for most patients. You could, if you taught on this med, if it was new, you could copy and paste everything that you taught that patient here into your narratives on your service notes. You can print this off, little printer icon here, or you can do a print screen or browser print, and you can print this off. Again, you need a printer, but you could take this back out to your patient as well. And these are layman's terms. So. And then the printer icon itself, you can this will be only for the med, but you can pick all that information that you want and export it all at once, and it'll give you all the drug interactions, the warnings, food interactions, side effects, pharmacology, all in one report for this one med. So that's how you add meds. Now, again, you'll see these trash cans here because we haven't saved the 485 yet, so you can still make changes to it by deleting them if it was an accident or if you put it in there twice. If the patient has 20 meds, when you're in there hitting that save and add, best practice, or what I used to do after about 3 or 4 meds, I'd hit save and close and then go back in to hit add med and add 3 or 4 or 5 more, then hit save and close when I'm done. That way, if you got through 20 meds and then something happened, your device dies, your computer dies, something happens, you wouldn't lose every bit of progress you've made so far. So if they have a large, and that's only really if they have a large number of meds, I do recommend splitting it up and just getting them back in there, adding them a couple at a time, a few of them at a time, to make changes to the med. So if this was already, went out with the 485 and the doctor discontinued the med or changed the dosage, to do that, you just click on the med. You come up here to the entry type, and now you're going to either do change or you're going to do discontinue. And you'll be able to make those changes as appropriate. Now, if you hit discontinue, it's going to require an end date. Just type in the end date and then hit save. And again, you do have that option to create the interim order if it is required. So that's how you can discontinue them and to change those dosages. Now, when you do change a dosage on that start date, down here, of course, you'd put the date of the new dosage changed. So we could say today's date. What that does is it's going to discontinue the initial dosage as of the day before the start date of the new dosage. And it'll automatically do that for you, so you don't have to make multiple steps. You don't have to end date one or discontinue one and add a new one. You can just do the change dosage, and it'll do everything automatically for you. Okay, so that's how we add meds, make changes to their dosage and frequencies and durations, and then discontinue them. Again, the medication kit, just to show you guys, it's more for hospice, but if you guys had a medication kit, it's usually only going to be for hospice or facilities where the patient may reside, but you could pick that list here, medication kit from this list, pick which ones from the kit you're going to use, and then you can put the start date. Now, the start date would be the same for every one of these meds if you were to do that. And all the rest of this is the same as adding a single med too. And then you would just hit save. Now, I'm not going to add those. And mass inactivate, that is, again, more for hospice. It will put an end date, whatever this end date is here, on all of the meds that you have checked. So it'll do it for every one of them. That's more of a hospice scenario, but just so you guys know, and again, you can create an interim order if you needed to do that as well. So to print a med profile, if you click on the print med profile, it will give you the options to print with all drug-to-drug interactions or only the major. You can include inactive meds, classifications, pharmacy addresses, patient date of birth, physician facts, and you can even filter to only print the meds that have a start date greater than and equal to whatever date you enter into this field here, and then you can hit export. And it will create a PDF of that med profile. And then again, your drug-to-drug interaction and interaction information. Again, that could be copied and pasted into a med order if you needed to send that to the physician. But there's also another way. So there's approved medication profile. Some agencies have clinicians do it on, starter cares research, rocks, things like that. Some will have clinicians do it every single visit. Really, you should be reconciling meds, make sure there's no changes in their medication regimen. And if there is, update the information appropriately so you always have the most current information here. So they do require, typically you're going to go through that process. And at the end, once you make sure all the meds are good, everything's good, you've made all the changes you need to make, you can do approved medication profile. And you don't have to find your name from this list. If you just hit enter approval signature, it's automatically going to, again, pull up that signature window. All you got to do is hit accept. You can enter comments in here, but here's where it can create an interim order for the major drug-to-drug interactions. You can just click that checkbox and hit save. And then that will be under the orders tab, and we'll see that here in a second. If there is an approval history in there, you're going to see who approved it and when they approved it. If you were to click on that, again, you can enter all that information that you want on the report, and you can export it. This is going to be a snapshot of what that med profile was at the time you approved it. So it's a good audit trail to see if things are getting done, to catch any mistakes. It will have, again, your approval signature here and the meds that you approved. So if there's any changes made after this, that would be on the next person, and then again they can find their name and then the date they did it, and then they'll see those changes appropriately there. You do have the ability to fax these medications, and again you can include all this information that you want when you hit export. It will pull all of that information into a file, creates right here. You can actually click on that and download it to view it if you wanted to, make sure everything looks good. You can adjust the attention to, the fax number. You can include text for the cover page, or you can even completely remove the cover page. And then you would hit send fax, and you can send this to a facility, to a pharmacy, to a doctor, anybody that you would need to. Okay, so that's a lot, but that's it with the meds tab. The orders tab is where all of your orders are going to be written. This is also where the OASIS will be managed after you've done your part and answered all the questions inside the service note. Then once you complete that service note, then they will have access to just the OASIS questions under the orders tab. So, you know, when the coding gets done and complete, there's a way for them to update the diagnosis codes on the OASIS, the 485, the service note, all at the same time. So they'll go through that process and everything else, and somebody else in the office will probably review and approve this OASIS before it gets locked and sent to state. So you guys pretty much won't do much for OASIS here unless you do a standalone OASIS, which we'll cover in a later training. Just to be aware, you guys for home health will not need this services requested or the diagnosis codes. This is for caregivers and for services that do not require doctor's orders. All the rest of the scheduling is going to be done directly in your 485 and additional order types. And again, we're probably going to have to come back to the order types on our next training. But this is where you can view all the orders. Just FYI, while you're in your service note, you have a tab at the top of your service note for meds and for orders and care needs. So when you click on that tab within the edit mode of your service note, it's a mirror image of this tab right here. You would be able to add meds, everything exactly how I showed you. It looks identical. And when you add them from your service note, it's all simultaneous with the meds tab. So as you're doing it in your note, it's going to be visible here. If you're in a note and somebody added a med here and then you go to the meds tab in your note, you're going to see those changes automatically. So be aware of that. Now the orders and care needs tab, that's going to be in your service note. And I'm going to go back over this. I just want you to be aware. It's a mirror image of this part of the orders, and then your care needs will be down below. See, I'm just writing something down, making a note here. But you can view your orders, but just clicking on the little printer icon, you'll see what's in that order. You can obviously see the status of the order, whether it's saved, approved, initiated, if it's been sent to the physician but not received, if it's been received, assigned. You're going to have all that information under the status column, as well as all your sent and received dates will be filled in as you get them all back. Now, case communications, missed visit communications, those go out and they're processed just like physician orders, but they don't require a physician's signature. So this one was the one I created for the drug-to-drug interaction. It actually doesn't give you much information. It just says there's a major drug interaction between warfarin and aspirin. It's major. So if you wanted that actual interaction information, that would need to be pasted in here, copied and pasted in here. But I'm going to get rid of that for now. We've already got another one in here. The Payers tab, this is where you can identify the payer for that patient. If that payer does require authorizations, that may be very beneficial, so you know how many visits you can even try to go. And to view those auths, you can come over here and underneath the auth column, if they require auth, you'll have a little icon. It may be green or it may be red like this. The red ones are missing information. The green ones are all good to go. But if you click on them, it will take you into where that authorization was entered. So you could see your discipline, the start and end date, and how many units or hours you have available. Okay. And if they had actual physical documentation for the authorization, your office could actually upload that and you'd be able to view the documentation by clicking on the description of it. So that's something that you guys may be needing to do. That's probably all you'll need to do with the payer tab. It should be entered from the office, and most of this should be filled out, the eligibility, all that good stuff. And if there's any missing information, that really needs to be taken care of by whoever's in charge of that. The service notes tab is where all of your service notes are going to start accumulating, and we can come back to this and revisit it after we have some in the system for this test patient. I just want to tell you there's a few cool things that you can do here. You do have the ability to filter to specific sections. This is very, very helpful for like if a doctor called about a patient's blood sugars, they want the last 30 days worth of blood sugars. Well, you could filter this to the section that has the blood sugars in it, and then you could filter the item to just the blood sugars. Works good with, when they ask for blood pressures or vital signs for the last month, things like that. You could filter the date range for the time frame you're looking for. If you only want the last 30 days, just change the date range here. When you make those filters, it will filter down to only the notes that have information in that section within this time frame. And then you can export that and send it to the physician. So it's really cool. You can actually attach pictures to your service notes. You can do it from here, but it actually shows up under the Documents tab. And there's a lot of things you can do in here. Now, I do not recommend adding service notes from here, so I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a minute. And then if you guys were to use the app, offline apps, and use the EVV information, this is where the EVV information for this specific patient would be uploaded, as well as that information would be added to the EVV tab on your associate tab. So they would be able to view all that for you. So they'd see all the different patients, but only your information on your associate EVV tab. And here you see all the associates that have seen the patient, but only this one patient's information. So that's a quick rundown of the patient encounter. We only have about 20 minutes left, 18 minutes left, so I can keep moving on and just keep talking. We're going to basically start moving into the next training, and we can get a little bit of it knocked out. But do you guys have any questions on the encounter so far? If so, you can either enter it in the chat or unmute your line, and we can take those questions one at a time. Again, this is just an overview of the chart. We didn't go into how to add service notes and all the actual writing orders. I did go over adding meds and adding everything to the clinical tab and physicians, but those are going to be on the following training. So if it's a question about those, just know we will get to that. So for now, I don't have any questions. I will kind of move on. Up here by the patient name, these options do change depending on what's going on with the patient. So this patient's already been activated. So once they've been activated, at this point, we can either discharge the patient, we can place them on hold. If we did have them on hold, we'd be able to reactivate them. We'd have a link that says reactivate patient. And I'm going to go through that process because you're going to have to learn how to do that for a resumption of care scenario anyway. The patient fact report, this is basically prints up everything in the chart minus the service notes and things like that and any uploaded documents. But you can view print patient fact report, and you can include any of this information that you want. You can even put it in a portrait or a landscape format, and you can export that. And again, it'll just be a report with all that information on here. So everything from the profile tab, the physicians tab, contacts tab, or notes. All your notes from the notes tab will be under here. Your payer information, all that information from the clinical tab is going to be pulled over. Your meds, everything that you wanted in that tab. So there's all kinds of information here. And then to get to the patient calendar, if you're in the patient encounter, you can go to their calendar by hitting the scheduling link up at the top, and it will bring you to the patient calendar. Again, you have that ability to do that straight from your home screen too. If you have that visit assigned to you, or that patient is assigned to, you can click on the patient's name, go straight to their schedule, which is helpful. When the patient asks you, hey, who's going to come again and when, you can say, well, it looks like we have therapy today, or, home health aides tomorrow, but, that could change based on staffing. But then again, like I told you, for these scheduling notes, so if you used all of a supply, or if you want to give that patient, that clinician, a heads up on that next visit to let them know, hey, that he's going to have a doctor's appointment before noon, so you have to go after. If there's a lab draw that's due, or some kind of skill that needs to be done specifically that day, typically lab draws, things like that, you can click on the note. If I was to receive that order, I'd write the order. Of course, clinicians should be reading all of their orders before taking care of that patient, and they would see that. But if you choose to add a note, again, this is a scheduling note. It's not a service note. You can click on that add note, just choose general type, and then you can say, take out 4x4s or something that's going to be important for that clinician to know before they see that patient. So it may not, you could add a note to any other discipline, to any other clinician on any visit, and let them know, hey, heads up. And then again, when you're on your home screen, before you even call your patients to set up your visit times, you can see these notes on the right side of the visit. If you click on that, those are your scheduling notes. They're very helpful for if it's, for your 30-day evals, so you don't drag and drop that visit over the 30-day line. Add a note, say, hey, this is an assessment, even though it could be plotted as an assessment or a 30-day assessment service code, and you guys can identify those service codes by hovering over the visits. You can see mine are showing up way low in the screen because I've zoomed in, but it'll tell you what that service code is. It should tell you if it's an assessment visit or not. However, it's still very helpful to know, because on this, again, on from here, you can't see the 5-day window for your research visits. You can't see the 30-day window for your 30-day evals, plus the LUPA scenarios, LUPA thresholds. Now with PDGM, you have a lot of opportunities to give yourself a LUPA. If you were to move, first of all, and it may be hard to see because of all these visits on here, but the background on the start of care, the first day of the episode, is going to be green, this lime green, and it does give you the legend up here above this as well. So the background, if it's lime green, that's the start of the certification period. This little peach color, that's your 30-day mark. So if you're dragging and dropping and managing your visits, and you have your 30-day visit for here on the 30th, your 30-day assessment doesn't have to be the halfway mark for your actual episode. So it could be on any day. So they just add one of those scheduling notes and say that, hey, this is my 30-day, and then you'd have to count and see, if you were going to move that visit, can you move that visit without moving it outside your 30-day mark? Now for the PDGM, you have this peach color 30-day. So if you were to drag and drop any visit from the first 30 days to the second 30 days, you could potentially put yourself in a LUPA scenario. So you want to always be aware of that. And same moving them from the second 30-day to the first 30-day. So if you're, for your LUPA thresholds, if you were allowed 4 or 5 visits for that first 30 days and 4 for the second, and you start moving them around and you get them out of line and you create a LUPA threshold, you're costing the agency money. So we give you a heads up with this color code, okay? And then the last 5-day window for your research, we put that in like a burnt orange looking color, dark salmon, whatever you want to call that. So you'll see that information. So sometimes you'll see on your calendars that some of these visits are blue backgrounds, some of them are green backgrounds, some are yellow, some are pink. Again, you're going to have a legend up here. If it's green, it means it's been assigned and it's not been verified. If it's blue, it's been assigned and verified. If it's yellow, it's unassigned, and if it's pink, it's unassigned. It depends on what calendar you're on. So we got 10 minutes. Any more questions or any questions, or do you want me to just kind of show you how to add a service note and kind of keep moving forward? Can we send case communication notes to specific persons? Those case communications under the orders tab are,
Let's see what they ask.
those are for the doctor. So those are going to be communications that go to a physician. If you need it attached to the patient encounter, the notes tab is where you're going to want to add specific notes that may, communications like you may be referring to. But then you also have the option for unread messages up here at the top. And I usually cover this on your next training, but these unread messages, if you click on it, it's kind of like a little bit of an email system. It is HIPAA compliant. It's in our servers, and you can send and receive messages here. In fact, your agency will be using this this function, so you guys will need to know to check for your unread messages. Now, if you have any unread messages, it'll tell you how many are unread. But no matter what, you can click on the link and you can get a list of all your messages. If they're open, you can filter them by open, your read messages, your sent messages, your deleted messages. You can filter to what you need to hear. To view the messages, you can hit the show more and it'll show you all the rest of this message if there is any. You can also mark it as read. If there's previous messages, again, it would have done the same thing as when you hit show more. It's the same as hitting previous messages. You can reply to whoever sent this to you. You can reply all if it was sent to multiple people. You can forward this, and then again, you can delete it. And it's only going to delete it out of your messages. It's not going to delete it. If this went to 10 people, it's going to be in all 10 people's messages center. Even if you delete yours, they would have to delete theirs separately if needed. To send a message, you can just click Send Message. It's going to bring up a little pop-up. You can send it to a specific team if you wanted to, specific disciplines like all of skilled nursing or all of PT. You can send it to specific disciplines or specific users. So you can pick names out of a drop-down box, and then you can add multiple names. You can add as many people as you want to this message. If you wanted to remove somebody from the message, you can highlight them and hit the X and get rid of them if you put them in there by mistake. And then you would just type in your message here and hit send, and then they would receive that message. So this is kind of our internal communication. This information, now we are going to look at making changes to it. We're not there at this time, but these messages, even though it may show you the patient name and start of care date or something like that, you'll get some of that information here, but you may or may not get any information. You may just have just a message. So there is no link to put this, basically to go directly to the patient chart. Now there is an option for the service notes. For the QA review, it also uses this messaging function. So if they were to QA your note and leave you a message to tell you, hey, you need to change this, you need to add this, you forgot to answer this, whatever the issue may be, then they will mark your service note as incomplete. You'll get the messages here, and then you can just go to the service note to start making those changes. You'll be able to, you can edit it from here or your home screen, make those changes to that note as they required. You'll end up leaving them messages. And again, we're going to go over that part of it later, but you'll have to give them a response back saying, I made those changes, or I don't agree with those changes, whatever it is you want to say, and then you guys can go back and forth and work that out. So anyway, I think we're about done. We only got 5 minutes left. I don't really have much else I can get into. Anybody else have any other questions for now?
Are you guys sure? This is Leslie. Any other questions? We got Brendan till 12:30. All right, well, speak now or forever.
again, we'll pick up where we left off, and I think we're going to have a little bit more time at the end of our training, the next one for this group. And so we should have, they'll probably have more questions by that point, and then we can, use up that time for that as well. So I'm not going to leave anybody hanging. If anybody does have questions in between now and then, you can reach out to your administrators, and they can reach out to me. During the transition, I'm going to be with you guys through this whole thing. We can make changes and tweaks to the system that we need to, roles and permissions, and just like that was said in the beginning. We are still working on your changes to your therapy notes, and I think we might be making some minor changes to this nursing notes again. So some of the stuff will look a little bit different as we go, but we'll make sure you know how everything works and functions, and make sure you guys are confident in the system. So anyway, I guess that's it for today. We will talk to you guys again soon. Hope you guys have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great day. Call me if you have any questions. Okay, bye.